She only meant to vent. One voice note, 60 seconds of sass, frustration, and brutal honesty about her impossibly arrogant boss. Except she sent it to him. Now, she waits to find out if she will be fired. The Las Vegas sun was blazing as always, casting its usual golden glow over the city's jagged skyline. But inside her cramped, one-bedroom apartment just off Fremont Street, Jasmine Torres felt anything but golden. She paced back and forth across the living room floor, still dressed in her pajama shorts and an oversized Whitney Houston t-shirt. A half-eaten bagel sat abandoned on the kitchen counter, its cream cheese beginning to crust over, forgotten in the midst of her stormy mood. Jasmine was fuming. Her phone screen glowed brightly in her hand as she stared at the email for the third time. The subject line alone made her want to throw the device across the room. Presentation format needs improvement. She clicked into it again, though she had already memorized the contents. Her boss, Damian Caldwell, had sent it at 6:03 a.m. A 3-paragraph critique disguised as feedback, filled with backhanded compliments and phrases like, "I would have expected more precision from someone with your level of potential." She scoffed. Ugh, your level of potential? What is that supposed to mean? Jasmine opened her voice note app and hit record, needing to vent before she exploded. Okay, Tasha, I swear to God if this man sends me one more condescending email before I've even had coffee, I'm going to scream. Like, who wakes up and chooses passive-aggressive arrogance before sunrise? Damian freaking Caldwell, that's who. She flopped onto her couch dramatically, legs over the armrest, one hand gesturing wildly as she continued the rant. This man struts around like he invented work ethic. He acts like he's descended from royalty just because he wears suits tailored like his life depends on it. Honestly, if his ego got any bigger, it'd need its own office with a corner window. She let out a bitter laugh and rolled her eyes. And you know what's funny? He's hot. That's the problem. All that smugness packed into a fine jawline and a stupidly symmetrical face. God had too much time when he made him, and none of it went into humility. The voice note hit exactly 59 seconds. She hit stop. Jasmine felt lighter. Venting to her best friend, Tasha, always helped. She scrolled through her message threads, spotted Tasha's name, hit send, and threw the phone face down on the couch with a victorious huff. With a little smirk on her face, she finally walked over to the kitchen to pour herself a cup of coffee, black, strong, and judgmental, just like her mood. A few minutes passed. Mug in hand, she returned to the living room, flopped down again, and unlocked her phone. That's when the blood drained from her face. Message sent to Damian Caldwell. Voice note played. Her mouth went dry. She blinked hard. No. She rechecked the name. It wasn't Tasha. She had sent the voice note to Damian. Her heart thudded so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. A warm flush of terror crawled up her neck. She replayed the moment in her head. How had she even? Then it hit her. Damian had messaged her on Slack that morning, asking if she had received the email. She had opened the app, and his name was at the top of her recent messages, right above Tasha's. And she had sent the voice note to him. No. Jasmine clutched her phone as if she could force it to undo the damage. She tapped frantically, trying to delete the message, but it was too late. The little check marks had already turned blue. Read. Listened. Gone. A full-body panic attack threatened to swallow her whole. She envisioned the possibilities, being called into HR, being fired on the spot, having security escort her out of the office like some criminal with a grudge against upper management. She pictured Damian's perfectly sculpted face twisting into that signature smirk of his, only this time with contempt. She began pacing again, breathing fast and shallow. The ceiling fan creaked above her, oblivious to her descent into social and professional suicide. Okay. Maybe he hasn't actually heard it. Maybe he clicked by mistake. Maybe the audio didn't work. Maybe I'll just quit and move to Portland and become a barista. Yeah, new identity, new life. She slumped onto the couch again, clutching the coffee mug like a lifeline. As the morning light spilled through her windows and bathed her anxiety in golden hues, Jasmine stared into the abyss, praying for a miracle. But she knew. Tomorrow she'd have to face him. And that voice note, it wasn't just a career risk. It was a declaration. Of war or of fate. The neon buzz of Las Vegas nights had given way to a sharp, clear morning. The Strip shimmered in the distance as the sun climbed over the desert horizon, casting long shadows against the high-rises. But Jasmine Torres wasn't noticing the city's usual sparkle. She was too busy practicing her resignation speech in the elevator. "Mr. Caldwell, I just wanted to say, thank you for the opportunity and please don't sue me." Ding. She flinched as the elevator reached the 25th floor, home of Radiant Lux, Las Vegas' most elite event planning company. The doors slid open to reveal the modern office space, sleek with glass partitions and minimalist black and white decor. Everything screamed money, power, and precision. And she, standing there in her black blazer and flats, screamed, "I'm about to be fired." She took a breath. "Okay, just walk normal," she muttered under her breath. Innocent. Confident. Like someone who didn't call her boss arrogant in a 59-second roast. Jasmine entered the office space, nodding stiffly at the receptionist, Lori, who offered her a bright smile. "Morning, Jazz." "Morning," she mumbled, eyes darting around like she was walking into enemy territory. The open floor buzzed with activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the smell of roasted espresso from the break room drifting faintly through the air. Everything was normal. Too normal. She made it to her desk near the south-facing windows, dropped her bag silently, and opened her laptop, fingers trembling slightly. She resisted the urge to check if Damien had messaged her again. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he didn't care. Or maybe he was waiting. And then she saw it, out of the corner of her eye. A movement behind the frosted glass of his corner office. The silhouette. Broad-shouldered. Impossibly tailored. He was there. She inhaled sharply and turned her eyes back to her screen. She tried to focus on emails, but every line blurred. Her ears rang with the echo of her voice note. Honestly, if his ego got any bigger, it'd need its own office with a corner window. Perfect. Just perfect. She stared at the clock. 8:42 a.m. And then her Slack pinged. Her heart dropped. She clicked the message, bracing herself. Green circle Damien Caldwell. "Do you have a minute?" That was it. No punctuation. No emojis. Just 7 words that felt like the final bell of a boxing match. Her legs went numb. With slow, reluctant steps, she made her way toward his office, heels clicking softly on the polished floor. The glass door was already ajar. She gave a gentle knock anyway. "Come in." His voice, smooth and unreadable, was like velvet pulled taut. She stepped in. The office was its usual impressive self, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the Strip, framed awards on the wall, a minimalist white desk that somehow had no clutter ever, and of course him. Damien Caldwell sat at the desk, his fingers steepled together. His charcoal gray suit clung to him like it had been stitched by the gods. His eyes, sharp and unreadable. He looked up at her. Jasmine opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She was already imagining how she'd explain this to her parents. Or to Tasha. Or to the unemployment office. Then he spoke. "So, condescending, huh?" Jasmine's heart stopped. She opened her mouth again, and this time, words stumbled out like broken glass. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm so sorry. That message was meant for someone else. It was completely unprofessional. I understand if you need to take action. I really respect this job, and Relax." He lifted a hand, cutting her off. And then, to her complete confusion, he smiled. A slow, amused, genuine smile. "I listened to the whole thing. Twice, actually." She stared, frozen. "You really think I act like I'm descended from royalty?" he added, raising an eyebrow, his tone light. I didn't mean it. Well, I guess I did, but not like that. It was just, I was venting, and..." He leaned back in his chair, the smile deepening into a soft laugh. He was laughing. Not mocking, not sarcastic. He was actually laughing. He said, folding his arms. I've had employees lie to me, insult me behind my back, quit without notice, and once someone tried to sell a client list to a competitor. But no one has ever accidentally sent me a full audio roast. Jasmine blinked, confused. She wasn't fired. She wasn't escorted out by security. She wasn't even being reprimanded. He tilted his head slightly, his voice turning curious. Why do you think I come off that way? Her brain scrambled for a reply. Honestly? She asked, testing the waters. Please. She paused, then stepped fully into the office, hands fidgeting at her sides. You never show any emotion. You send emails like you're allergic to warmth. And no offense, but you kind of look like you fire people for sport. Another laugh. He stood up now, walking toward the windows, hands in his pockets. That's fair, he said, glancing over his shoulder. But I think I'm misunderstood. And maybe a little overdue for a reality check. Jasmine didn't know whether to be relieved or even more nervous. Was this a trap? You're not mad, she asked cautiously. He turned back to face her, and for the first time, there was a softness in his voice. No, I'm entertained. You have guts, and you were honest. I can work with that. She blinked. Wait, I still have a job. You still have a job, he confirmed. In fact, I might be putting you on the client concept team for the Monaco Gala next month. What? But I'm just an admin. Apparently not just anything, he said, with another one of those infuriating smirks. Dismissed, Ms. Torres. Oh, and Jasmine. She paused in the doorway, heart still galloping in her chest. Next time you roast me, make it under 2 minutes. Efficiency matters. She didn't know whether to laugh, faint, or run. Instead, she smiled. Noted, Mr. Caldwell. And as she walked back to her desk, still stunned, one thing was clear. Nothing about today had gone how she expected. But somehow that wasn't a bad thing. The following week was surreal. Jasmine Torres kept expecting a trap, some sort of delayed punishment from Damian Caldwell, the CEO-turned-accidental roast recipient. But instead of HR meetings or awkward stares, there was something else entirely. Flirting. Or was it teasing? Banter? Professional sarcasm? Whatever it was, it felt dangerous. It began subtly the day after the voice note incident. Jasmine had just finished setting up the conference room for the team's weekly marketing brainstorm when Damian stepped inside. His usual espresso in hand. That usual cool aura wrapped around him like an expensive coat. Morning, he said, voice casual. Do I need to check my ego at the door, or is this a safe space? Jasmine had just placed a tray of croissants down. She froze mid-step, then looked up to find him smirking. Safe-ish, she replied. Depends on the suit. Charcoal gray, he replied with a smug nod. Risky. That was the first exchange. The second happened during a team lunch later that week. Jasmine had been seated across from him at a long table full of executives and coordinators at a trendy downtown fusion spot. He raised a brow mid-bite and asked in front of everyone. So, Jasmine, what's my arrogance rating today? Be honest. You know I value feedback. She choked on her iced tea. The whole table went quiet, then burst into laughter. Even Kara Montgomery, the ever-snooty operations director, let out a reluctant chuckle. Jasmine played it cool. I'd say a solid 7.5. You lose points for pretending you don't enjoy this attention. He lifted his glass toward her in a silent touché. And so it continued. Every time she thought the awkwardness would return, it didn't. Instead, Damian found ways to turn her jab into a running joke. And not the cruel, ego-flexing kind he could have easily played. He was light, almost playful. He stopped by her desk occasionally, something he never used to do. Once, when she was building a client pitch deck, he peered over her shoulder and said, Very nice. Minimalist. Smart. Although I'd go with a bolder font. Something worthy of a Greek god. She snorted. Don't tempt me. I'll make all the slides in Times New Roman and call it Mount Olympus chic. He laughed, tapped the desk, and walked away. Their interactions didn't go unnoticed. Coworkers whispered. Jasmine caught glances exchanged during meetings. The air was thick with what is going on between them, but no one dared speak it aloud. Then came Thursday night, the company's quarterly networking mixer. Radiant Lux had rented out the rooftop of a boutique hotel on the Strip. String lights danced overhead, and the city glowed below like 1,000 fireflies trapped under glass. Waiters in black vests passed champagne, and soft jazz spilled from a live trio in the corner. Jasmine arrived in a satin golden dress that hugged her curves and glowed against her skin. Her curls were pinned on one side with a gold clip, the rest cascading over her shoulder. She looked stunning, and she knew it, though she tried to play it down. When she stepped onto the rooftop, she felt it immediately. Eyes turned. Compliments came. But the one she noticed most was the man in the black suit near the bar, Damien. He was talking to a client, a whiskey in hand. He caught her eye, paused mid-sentence, and gave her a slow, almost imperceptible once-over. No smirk. No joke. Just a look. He excused himself and walked toward her. "You clean up well, Miss Torres." "Likewise. Very Greek god tonight," she said, tipping her glass toward his suit. "Custom Armani?" "Of course." He leaned in slightly. "I had to try and keep up." Her breath hitched. For a second, the rooftop disappeared. It was just them, the sound of her pulse, and the static air between them. Before she could respond, Kara swooped in, greeting Damien with a little too much enthusiasm and dragging him into another conversation. Jasmine watched him go, suddenly flustered. She needed fresh air. Later that evening, as the party was winding down and people trickled out, Damien found her leaning against the railing, overlooking the glittering Strip. "You disappeared," he said. "Needed a break," she replied. "Crowds drain me." He stood beside her, sipping from his glass. They were quiet for a moment. "You've changed," he said eventually. "Since the voice note." She frowned slightly. "How so?" "You're bolder. More yourself. It suits you." She looked at him, eyes sharp. "You're not what I expected either." He nodded slowly. "Good or bad?" "Still undecided," she replied. "But you're human. That's new." He laughed. "You'd be surprised how often I forget to be." Another pause. The wind shifted slightly, brushing a curl across her cheek. He reached out, hesitated, then tucked it behind her ear. Her heart fluttered. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even romantic, technically. But it was something. A moment. The kind you could only have once without ruining it. She looked up at him. "So what now?" Damien smiled faintly, but didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his glass and clinked it softly against hers. "To unexpected truths," he said. She tapped hers back. "And to knowing when not to send voice notes." They both laughed, but the moment lingered. Neither of them moved. Neither of them wanted to. And somewhere beneath the rooftop lights and glittering skyline, something that had started as a mistake was quietly rewriting itself into something else. Something neither of them could name, yet. It was 2 weeks after the company mixer, and nothing felt normal anymore. The teasing hadn't stopped. If anything, it had evolved. Damien had started involving Jasmine in more meetings. She was no longer just the assistant. Now she was Jasmine who should weigh in, or Jasmine whose instincts are sharp, or Jasmine, can you walk the client through your mock-up? But it wasn't just about work. He would glance up during meetings, hold her eyes a second too long. He'd brush her arm when passing her in the hallway. He once brought her an iced latte with oat milk without asking. Just left it on her desk with a yellow sticky note that said, "For your pre-arrogant email rituals." She didn't know what they were doing, but she also didn't want to stop. And then he asked her to join him after hours. "There's something I'd like your input on," he said casually one Friday afternoon. "I'm meeting a client at our rooftop lounge. You're good with energy, mood, atmosphere. Join me?" She hesitated. "Strictly professional," he added, though his smile said otherwise. The Radiant Lux Rooftop Lounge wasn't just a lounge. It was a hidden gem tucked 28 floors above the Strip, reserved for elite clients, VIP events, and the occasional private indulgence of the CEO himself. When Jasmine stepped out onto the rooftop that night, The desert breeze kissed her skin. Vegas sparkled below in its endless neon hum, the lights stretching into forever. She wore a burnt orange satin blouse tucked into high-waisted black trousers, heels clicking softly against the stone floor. Her hair was pulled back into a loose twist, gold hoops swinging gently at her ears. Damien was already there, standing near the railing with 2 glasses in hand. Pinot Noir. Thought I'd take a risk, he said, handing her a glass. A CEO who drinks red on a rooftop? You are evolving, she replied with a smirk. Trying, he said, then gestured for her to follow him toward the seating area. Low velvet couches, a fire pit flickering between them, and soft jazz humming from hidden speakers. They sat. For a while, the conversation danced lightly. Event concepts, upcoming VIP bookings, ideas for an exclusive masquerade ball in October. They talked shop, but with an undertone that made everything feel personal. Jasmine leaned back against the couch, swirling her wine. You know, I keep waiting for the catch. What catch? The moment where you turn into the arrogant guy I expected when I started this job. Damien turned to her, his expression unreadable. And if I told you, that guy existed, but he's not the one running things anymore. Jasmine blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. What changed? He exhaled, slow and deliberate, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I built this company with nothing. Literally. No investors, no family money. Just sleepless nights, charm, and sheer refusal to lose. Every room I walked into, I had to prove I belonged. So I became efficient. Blunt. Controlled. Some people called it confidence. Most called it arrogance. Eventually, I stopped caring what they called it. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She saw something in him now she hadn't before. A man tired of his own armor. But that voice note? He said, a small laugh in his voice. It hit harder than I expected. You saw through me in under 60 seconds. I was angry, she said softly. You weren't supposed to hear it. Maybe I was, he replied, looking at her. Maybe I needed to. The air thickened. Their eyes locked, his no longer cold and calculating but open. Honest. She didn't know what she had expected when she joined him tonight. But it hadn't been this. So what are we doing, Damien? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. He leaned back slowly, eyes searching hers. I don't know, but I know what I'm not doing. She raised a brow. I'm not pretending anymore, he said. Not about how I feel when you walk into a room, or how I listen when you speak, or how. I've thought about kissing you more than I should. Her pulse roared in her ears. The fire pit between them popped, sending a flicker of flame into the night. She didn't move. She didn't break eye contact. Then why haven't you? She asked. Because I didn't want to cross a line, he said. But I'm realizing the line's already blurred. And maybe it's not about crossing it. Maybe it's about choosing what's real over what's safe. Silence. Not tense. Just heavy. Important. The strip below carried on in its noisy, chaotic rhythm. But up here, they were suspended in a bubble of possibilities. Jasmine looked down at her wine glass, then back up. If you kiss me, she said, it can't be a mistake. Damien's jaw tightened slightly. He reached forward, took her glass, and set it gently on the side table. Then he did the same with his. He leaned in slowly, deliberately. His hand rested just behind her on the cushion, not touching her, but close enough to feel the heat. It won't be, he whispered. And then he kissed her. No rush. No hesitation. Just a deep, slow unraveling of everything unspoken between them. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. Whatever had started as a mistake was no longer accidental. Something had changed on that rooftop. And they both knew there was no turning back. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since the rooftop kiss. Since Jasmine had felt the world shift beneath her feet, and her boss's lips press against hers like a secret they weren't supposed to keep. And now, here she was, pretending everything was business as usual. Except it wasn't. She and Damien hadn't defined whatever this was, but it had continued, subtly. Late-night text threads. lingering eye contact during team meetings. Coffee magically appearing on her desk exactly how she liked it, no questions asked. They hadn't kissed again, but the silence between them was thick with the when, not the if. And the rest of the office? It was starting to notice. On a warm Tuesday morning, the kind that makes Las Vegas feel like a sun lamp set to high, Jasmine arrived at the office early. She liked the quiet before the chaos. Before the phones rang, the clients emailed, the coworkers gossiped. She set her things down and was walking toward the espresso machine when she heard it. Voices. 2 of them, just around the corner in the conference room. The door was cracked open, just enough for the sound to slip through like steam. One voice she recognized instantly, clipped, sharp, unmistakably upper management. Kara Montgomery, Director of Operations. The other voice? Damien's. Jasmine froze just outside the door, not out of intent to eavesdrop, but because of what Kara was saying. You need to be careful, Damien. Her tone was firm. Not a suggestion, a warning. You've built too much to throw it off balance over a crush. Jasmine's heart dropped. Her fingers curled slowly around her coffee cup. It's not a crush, Damien replied, quiet but steady. And I know what I'm doing. Kara scoffed. Do you? Because the board won't care how sincere your intentions are when they find out you're emotionally entangled with a subordinate. There was a pause. Then, she's not just a subordinate, he said. Kara didn't miss a beat. No, she's also smart, capable, and young. And she's not ready for what comes with being seen as your distraction. Jasmine couldn't move, could barely breathe. If you care about her at all, Kara added, her voice softening, you'll end this before it becomes irreversible. Silence. Then footsteps. Jasmine darted back down the hallway, around the corner, and slipped into the copy room just as Kara exited the conference room. She could feel her pulse in her throat. She waited until the coast was clear, until the room stopped spinning, until the phrase, if you care about her, stopped echoing in her skull. Then she left. Quietly, calmly. But she didn't go back to her desk. She didn't go back to the emails or the presentations or the day's meetings. She left the office. She didn't text him, didn't call. Instead, she took an Uber out of the city, west into the red. The sandstone towers of Red Rock Canyon loomed like ancient giants against the sky, and Jasmine hiked until the wind was louder than her thoughts. She needed space, not from Damien, but from everything. From the office, from the whispers, from the terrifying realization that she was falling for someone whose world didn't make room for someone like her. She found a ledge halfway up the trail and sat, legs dangling over the edge, the vast desert stretching below her like a painting. She didn't cry, but her chest ached. It was late when her phone buzzed. Damien, where are you? She ignored it. 3 minutes later. You're not at your desk. Kara said you left. Are you okay? Then, please call me. Or just tell me you're safe. Finally, she replied. I'm fine. I just needed air. Where are you? Somewhere with no board members or glass walls. There was a pause, then her phone rang. She didn't answer. Instead, she texted. I heard you. And her. Everything. Another pause. Then he replied. Where? Red Rock. Don't come. Just let me think. She stared at the message thread for what felt like hours before locking her phone and lying back on the rock, eyes to the stars. The next morning, she returned to the office before sunrise. The world was still dark, the city just waking. She made herself a coffee, took the longest route to her desk, and avoided the corner office completely. But by mid-morning, Damien appeared. He didn't speak at first. Just placed a file on her desk. The Monaco Gala concept. You're leading it. Jasmine looked up, caught his eyes, and saw it. Regret. Worry. And something else, something deeper. You're giving me lead? I should have weeks ago, he said quietly. You've earned it. I just wanted you to know. Whatever you heard yesterday, Kara doesn't speak for me. And I don't regret anything that's happened between us. Jasmine leaned back slowly in her chair. Even if it risks everything you've built? especially if it's the reason I start building something that matters. She stared at him, then nodded once. Not a yes, not a no, just an acknowledgement that they had crossed a threshold. And the next step, whatever it was, would not be simple. But she'd take it anyway. Later that day, as she stood in front of the team and presented her vision for the Monaco Gala, Damien sat at the back of the room. Silent, proud, watching her with something like awe. And for the first time, Jasmine didn't feel like someone's assistant trying to prove she belonged. She felt like she was becoming something more. To the company, to herself, and maybe, just maybe, to him. It had been a week since Jasmine had led the Monaco Gala presentation, and in that time, something shifted. Not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. People were treating her differently now. Clients, colleagues, even Kara, who once passed her like she was invisible, now offered curt nods of acknowledgement in passing. But even with the rising respect and subtle praise, Jasmine couldn't ignore the space between her and Damien, growing and aching like a string pulled taut but never snapped. They were talking less. Not coldly, not awkwardly, just cautiously, like two people walking a tightrope across the city skyline, knowing one wrong word could send everything they'd built, trust, flirtation, warmth, tumbling. And then one night, everything cracked open. It started with a message. Damien, are you free tonight? Jasmine, depends. Am I being summoned professionally or personally? Damien, personally. But I'll wear a suit if it helps. She didn't respond right away. But eventually her thumbs moved. Jasmine, where? Damien, meet me at the High Roller. 9 p.m. The High Roller was Vegas' crown jewel of observation wheels. A 550-foot tall circle of steel and light that rotated slowly above the strip. At night, it glowed like a halo. Most people used it for tourists' views or overpriced champagne dates. Damien Caldwell, of course, had rented out a private pod. Jasmine arrived at 8:58, dressed in a deep navy blue wrap dress, her heels echoing softly against the smooth concrete of the loading platform. Her makeup was minimal but flawless, and her hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail that emphasized the curve of her jaw. He was already waiting. Black dress shirt, open at the collar. No tie. Sleeves rolled to the elbows. Effortlessly polished. Their eyes met. Neither of them smiled, not yet. A private host ushered them inside the glass pod, closing the doors with a soft hiss. The ride began. It was just them. No one else. The lights of Las Vegas exploded below, glittering like a million tiny promises. For the first full rotation, they didn't speak. Just stood side by side, facing the view, arms barely brushing. The silence wasn't tense, it was charged. And then Damien spoke. I never wanted to become someone people feared. Jasmine turned to him, surprised by the sudden vulnerability. I spent years trying to be impressive, he continued, thinking success would feel like validation. It doesn't. It's lonely. It's exhausting. She didn't interrupt. He shifted to face her fully, his eyes soft in the glow of the city. And then you happened. Voice note and all. And for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to control the moment. I just felt it. Jasmine took a step closer, her arms folded gently in front of her. I didn't mean to break your armor, she said quietly. But I don't regret it. Neither do I. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing slightly. But I do regret holding back these past few days. After Kara, after Red Rock. I didn't want you to feel like you were stepping into my world unprepared. And I didn't want to push you before you were ready. Her breath caught. So what is this, Damien? The wheel was halfway through its loop now. At its peak. He turned toward her, finally closing the space. It's me telling you I'm not here to play games. That I've fallen for the woman who called me arrogant, because she was right. And because she looked past it. Jasmine blinked, her voice barely audible now. You've fallen for me? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Even if the board doesn't approve? Even if Kara glares holes through your skull in every meeting? Even if the dam strip shuts down and the sky falls? He stepped closer. But only if you've fallen too. Her heart pounded like a bass drum inside her chest. The whole city was laid out behind him, glittering, wild, fast-paced. And still, this man standing in front of her felt like the most disarming thing in all of Vegas. "I have," she whispered. It came out before she could second-guess it, before she could filter it through pride or fear. "I tried not to," she continued. "You were supposed to be the guy I rolled my eyes at, not the guy I thought about when I closed mine." He laughed softly, relief breaking across his face. "So what now?" she asked. Damien stepped in, and this time there was no hesitation. He kissed her again, not like the rooftop. This kiss was deeper, fuller, less uncertain. It was filled with knowing, with choice. The pod reached the top of the wheel, pausing slightly at its peak. They broke apart just long enough for him to whisper, "This is real. If you're in, I'm all in." Jasmine smiled, brushing her thumb gently across his jaw. "Then let's stop pretending we're in two different worlds." They stood there, locked in that moment, high above the noise and chaos of the city that never stopped spinning. And when the wheel finally descended again, it wasn't just the skyline they were coming down to. It was a new reality, one where they didn't have to hide, one where the lights of Vegas weren't the only things that burned bright. 6 months later, the desert sun spilled across the city like melted gold, bathing the glass towers of Summerlin in warmth. On the western edge of Las Vegas, away from the noise of the Strip, the newest branch of Radiant Lux stood tall, sleek, modern, and shimmering like a statement piece against the pale Nevada sky. Today was its grand opening. A vision turned reality, a celebration of growth, and a subtle unveiling of something more. Inside the new building, the energy was electric. Clients, press, and top-tier event professionals buzzed through the lobby, sipping champagne from crystal flutes and sampling hors d'oeuvres passed by servers in black-on-black uniforms. The decor was perfection, a contemporary blend of desert tones and modern elegance. Terracotta planters with succulents, soft neutral fabrics, warm lights, and custom art installations that hinted at both luxury and originality. At the center of it all stood Jasmine Torres, clipboard in hand, dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit with gold accents and a confidence that turned heads. She moved with purpose, checking last-minute details, coordinating arrivals, adjusting place cards, but with the kind of grace that came from knowing this was her stage too. Because it wasn't just Radiant Lux's expansion. It was hers. Her role now? Creative lead. No longer fetching coffee or filtering emails. No longer invisible. She had earned every inch of the title, through fire, fear, and finally, belief in her own voice. Across the room, Damien Caldwell watched her with quiet pride. He stood near the back, dressed in a midnight navy suit and a relaxed smile, the kind that came easier these days. He still carried that air of authority, but it had softened. He was still Damien, but more whole now. She caught him watching. He didn't look away. Neither did she. They didn't need to hover around each other, or make it obvious. The people around them still speculated, still whispered, but that didn't matter anymore, because the truth didn't need hiding. Later in the evening, as the speeches began and guests raised their glasses to toast the company's success, Damien stepped forward with a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice strong and steady, "when I started Radiant Lux, I built it with an idea that unforgettable events weren't about flash, but about feeling. About crafting something personal, impactful." He paused, his gaze finding Jasmine's briefly before continuing. "And while today is about growth, this stunning new space, our incredible clients, our expanding team, it's also about the people behind it all. People who rise, who surprise you. A beat. Jasmine Torres, please join me." A ripple went through the room. She stepped forward, heels clicking softly, the room parting for her as if it knew. This wasn't just acknowledgement. It was a crowning. He handed her the mic with a slight smile, eyes gleaming. Jasmine took a breath, the crowd watching. "6 months ago," she began, "I nearly quit this company because I thought I didn't belong. I thought my voice, quite literally, had ruined everything. But somehow, that voice opened a door I didn't know existed." Laughter sparkled around the room, some people catching the inside joke. I'm standing here today not because I did everything right, but because I spoke up. I took a risk, and someone listened. She glanced at Damien, just for a second. So if you're here tonight wondering if you belong in a space that seems too polished, too elite, too impossible, you do. Make mistakes. Take space. And trust me, your voice might just change everything. Applause rose like a wave. Genuine. Warm. And when she handed the mic back, Damien leaned in just enough to whisper, "Marry me." She blinked, stunned. Her heart stopped. "What? Not now. Not here," he murmured with a grin. "But soon. Because this life, all of it, means nothing without you." She stared at him, still in shock. Then whispered, "You arrogant bastard." He laughed, eyes sparkling. "So that's a yes?" "It's a shut up before I propose first." As the party carried on around them, they slipped away to the outdoor balcony. The desert breeze swept through Jasmine's curls as they stood side by side, watching the Vegas lights blink in the distance. "Do you ever think about how this all started?" she asked. "Every day. You almost fired me. You almost quit." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And instead, Damien said, wrapping his arm around her waist, you sent me the most honest message I've ever received. And I fell in love with the woman who sent it." They stood there, wrapped in a silence that no longer felt uncertain, but solid, grounded, real. Beneath the vast Las Vegas sky, where fortunes turned in seconds and mistakes often cost more than they were worth, something extraordinary had been built. Not just a company or a title or a reputation, but a connection. One forged through vulnerability, courage, and the most accidental confession imaginable. And this time, Jasmine wasn't just someone's assistant. She was the story, the spark, the woman who sent a voice note and got a future. Together, we have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.